This is a shir on Likutei Sichos Chelek Yud Tes, the Sicha of titled Bracha Simchas. It's titled Simchas Torah, page 380 in Likutei Sichos Chelek Yud Tes. Friedrich Rebbe said once in a Simchas Torah Sicha, said the Friedrich Rebbe as follows. Simchas Torah is an entaren psichin. On Simchas Torah, the gates are open. As einen offen die Shari Eira, Shari Bracha, Shari Hatzlacha. At that time, the gates of light, Eira, are open. The gates of Bracha, of blessing, are open. And the gates of Hatzlacha, of success, are open. The Rabbi says, in order to look in the Hirotzins, what we say the night of Hoshana Rabbah about the various gates that open up for us at this time. And then continues the Friedrich Rebbe, although he just said that there are three kinds of gates that are open, then he says, Alle Shorim sind enough, and all the gates are open. Und das nimmt man mit Torah, and this is achieved, this you take with Torah. And that's the end of the quote. Says the Rebbe, the words of Rabbi Seinu, the words of our rabbis, of our leaders, of our Nasiim, are exact, with a precise exactness. So for the fact that the Rebbe specifies exactly Shari, Eira, Shari, Bracha, Shari, Hatzlacha, those three gates, the gates of light, blessing, and success, even though as he continues immediately to say, Alle Shorim sind enough, and all the gates are open. So from this it is imperative that the main advantage and achievement of Simchas Torah is in the fact that these three individualized gates that we mentioned are open. Eira, Bracha, and Hatzlacha. So we have to understand, what's the connection of these three gates, specifically light, blessing, and success, to Torah? As he said, all these gates we take through Torah. Additionally, we have to understand, and even more so, it's known that in the 6 days of creation are corresponding to the 6,000 years of the world. So one day connected corresponding to 1,000 years. So for the fact that the creation of light was in the first day, before the third day of creation, which the third day of creation refers to the 3,000th year of creation in which Matan Torah took place. Matan Torah took place in the year 2,448 from creation, the third thousand, so corresponding to the third day. But on the first day, there was already light. So from this, it's imperative to say, L'chaira, that the concept of the gates of light, Shari Eira, is not dependent on Torah. Light was created on the first day. Torah was created on the third day, if each day is corresponding to 1,000 years. Similarly, regarding to the gates of Bracha, Shari Bracha, it's known that one of the reasons that the Torah starts off with the letter Bereishis is base. Why does the Torah start off with the base? It should start off with the Aleph. Aleph is the first letter. And one of the reasons is, various reasons are given. One of them is because base is Lashon Bracha. Aleph, there's a word that's the opposite of Bracha, right? Orur. Base, that's Lashon Bracha. So if that's the case, so Bracha is already there at the beginning of creation. Bereish is Baralikim. At the beginning, Hashem creates the world from its very outset with Bracha. So why do we say that the gates of Bracha are connected with Torah? Torah comes only later. At the very beginning of creation, there was already, as we say, the first day there's Eira, and even before the first day, very beginning of creation, there's Bracha. Why do we say that this is something that's coming to us through Torah? The question becomes even greater. Since we say the Chazal tell us the world was created in a way that it was complete. So that means to say that the concept of bracha that's hinted at in the base of Bereishis, that the world was created with blessing. So at the very time of creation, that means it was already a complete blessing. Because otherwise you could say maybe the creation started with a gradient, a certain grade, a certain level of blessing, and then when the Torah came, it became full blessing. But if Chazal tell us, our sages tell us that the world was created in a complete state from the very beginning, so that means the bracha was also a complete bracha. And that would be also regarding to the light. And on the contrary, we talk about the light that the world was created, that Hashem created on the first day of creation. It was totally limitless, without limitation, as our sages tell us. That Adam Harishon was able, he could look through this light. He was able to see from the end of the world to the end of the world. He was able to see throughout the whole world. It was a very powerful light, the kind of which we don't have, was hidden away. So that means that the light was also in a complete way. In other words, not just was the general concept of Eira and Bracha, of light and blessing there at the beginning of creation, not dependent on Torah. We say even the contrary. We say that the kind of blessing and kind of light that was there at the beginning of the creation, even before Torah, was betachlis hashlemus, was in a complete way, in a perfect way, and that's not dependent on Torah. It comes before Torah. So why does the Frierdiker Rebbe say that the Shari Eira and Shari Bracha we get it through Torah Dafka? Base. So we could have explained this, that the wholesomeness, the highest level of wholesomeness and completeness you talk about in terms of creation, the way it is in and of itself from the created state, even the way it is created in a complete way at the very beginning of creation, that's all a completeness, a wholesomeness, but with a limitation. And that's why it's actually not a absolute wholesomeness. Why? And that's why we're going to say that the Shari Eira, perhaps we can say that the gates of light and the gates of Bracha, we take and they're achieved in a complete way, dafka through Torah. Because why? Because when we say here, when the Frierdiker Rebbe is talking about the Shari Eira, light, and he's talking about Shari Bracha, blessing, he means the emesa, the absolute, complete, emes way of Eira and Bracha, the way they are in their absolute fullness. In other words, the way they are mitzad Hashem. Hashem is the wholesomeness, the most truthful wholesomeness possible. That can only be taken through Torah. Because as we know, the Matan Torah brought down into this world something that wasn't there at the beginning of creation. At the beginning of the creation, there could have been a completeness in Eira and Bracha and light and blessing, but Matan Torah brought down Hashem's presence into the world. Like we know that by Matan Torah, the division between the supernal worlds and the lower worlds was ripped away, was drawn down, was taken away. So therefore, it makes perfect sense to say that even though we describe the world being created from the perspective of creation, there was a wholesomeness in terms of Eira and Bracha, but that cannot compare to what happens through Torah. Through Torah, we have the wholesomeness, the way it is mitzad Hashem, the emesa completeness of Eira and Bracha. That comes through Torah. However, that's not a sufficient explanation, says the Rebbe. Why? Because first of all, if so, what the Frierdiker Rebbe is saying is lacking its full ikar chosim hasefer. The main point that he's saying is missing in what he's actually saying. If we're saying that generally speaking, there is Eira and Bracha, light and blessing, even in a complete way without Torah, just in terms of creation. So, and what he's talking about, the Rebbe is talking about the greatness that gets achieved, gets added dafka after the giving of Torah. So he should have said that after Matan Torah we take Eira and Bracha in a complete way, the way they are mitzad Hashem. But the Frierdiker Rebbe doesn't emphasize that. Base, the reason why Simchas Torah is on Yom Tov Sheni of Shmini Atzeres, why isn't it on Shavuos? Shavuos is when the Torah was given. Why do we celebrate Simchas Torah, the celebration of the Torah, on the day it was given? Is because the Simchas Torah is connected with Yom Kippur. It's connected, what will happen on Yom Kippur? The second Luchos, we're giving Yom Kippur. Remember, Hashem takes, Moshe Rabbeinu breaks the first Luchos, right after Shavuos, 40 days after Shavuos. And then after the second set of 40 days, and the third set of 40 days, where Hashem forgives Bnei Yisrael entirely on Yom Kippur, the end of the third set of 40 days, he comes down and there's the second Luchos. So that's why we just had Simchas Torah is the first opportunity after Yom Kippur to celebrate the giving of the Torah, in the way of the second luchos, which the second luchos are called kiflaim l'tushiyah. They're a double, and they are in a way that they have additional strength. They're not just a repeat of the first. They're double, and they have strength that the first luchos didn't even have. So since what the Frierdiker Rebbe is saying is like this, that the words this Shari and Shari Bracha, dosnet memiter, this we take through Torah, and that is a continuation when we talk about that this is what happens on Simchas Torah, that Simchas Torah, the gates are open. So we understand that with this lashon, that with Torah, we take the Eira and Bracha, must be talking about Simchas Torah. In other words, with the Torah that we're talking about is the second giving of the Torah, so to speak, the second luchos. And since that's the case, even if we want to say that Shari Eira, we're talking about the way it is, mitzad Hashem's completeness, but that doesn't tell us why dafka requires the second luchos, why it wasn't enough. I mean, the Torah was given on Shavuos, the way Hashem tore away the distinction, the mechitza, the barrier between up and down, the Yerim Tachtenim, and he came down here in Tachtenim. So why isn't Chag HaShavuos sufficient to open up, to bring down that Oira and Bracha to the world? It seems from what the Friedrich Rebbe is saying is that it's Dafka Simchas Torah, which is a continuation of Yom Kippur, which is related to the second Lucha, is that Dafka opens up the gates of Oira and Bracha. So again, we're asking it, the Oira and Bracha was there from creation. You'll tell me, no, that wasn't enough, because that was Oira and Bracha, the way creation is its completed state. By Simchas Torah, we're talking about Oira and Bracha that comes the way Hashem projects Oira and Bracha, which that only happens after Hashem descends into the world, which happens at Matan Torah. Says the Rebbe, but why is then the Friedrich Rebbe connecting a Dafka with Simchas Torah, which is talking about the second Luchos? That should already been one of the achievements of Shavuos, that you have Oira and Bracha, the way Hashem projects into the world, where He gave us the Torah. But it seems to be that it's Dafka connected with the Simchas Torah, which is a celebration of the Lucha Shniya. So it has to have something Dafka to do with the Nesinas Lucha Shniyas, which we're going to explain now. Gimel. So we'll understand this by first explaining that in Simchas Torah we find three concepts, which is reminiscent to the three gates we're talking about: the gates of Eira, the gates of light, the gates of blessing, and the gates of Hatzlacha, success. So let's understand the three things, three components of Simchas Torah. First of all, Simchas Torah, like in every second day Yom Tov, has two things. The second day Yom Tov is the way the second day of Yom Tov is a continuation of a Suvav. It's caused by, and therefore a continuation of the first Yom Tov. First Yom Tov, and because it's Chutz La'aretz, we have to add a second version, extension of that Yom Tov. Base, we have something that's not just an extension of the first Yom Tov. In it actually comes something additional, which is called Arevim Alai Divrei Seifrim, the words of the Chachamim, the words of the scribes, the words of the Rabbanon that instituted additions and safeguards and extensions to the Torah. They are more beloved and more sweet to me even than the written Torah, because and that you don't have on the first Yom Tov. That's not just an extension of the first Yom Tov. The first Yom Tov is Minat Torah, Midei Raisa. The second Yom Tov is something added by Divrei Sefer, and there's some specialty, some sweetness to that. That's in every second day Yom Tov. On Simchas Torah, you have a third thing, as we've spoken several times, that from the fact that Simchas Torah is not just called second day Shmini Atzeres, we have first day Sukkot, second day Sukkot, first day Pesach, second day Pesach. Simchas Torah is a day in and of itself. It's not just second day Shmini Atzeres. So from this we understand that in addition to the fact that it's the second day of Yom Tov of the Shmini Atzeres Yom Tov, it also has its own thing. It has the inyan that it's Simchas Torah, it's the joy of the Torah. And the same way it is by Yom Tov Sheni, even though Yom Tov Sheni is only rabbinic, it's only B'divrei Seifrim, but on the contrary, because of that, there's a maila, there's an advantage over Yom Tov Rishon of the first day Yom Tov. As we said, that Chachamim expressed themselves and said that Arevim Alai Divrei Seifrim, more sweet upon me is the words of the Seifrim, the scribes, and with Chachamim, more than what's written in the Torah, the Divrei Torah. Similarly also by this third concept. Even though there's absolutely no obligation, even not a rabbinic obligation, to do Simchas Torah, it's only a minig, like the Zohar says, "V'noyagim lemebad Yisrael ima chedva," that the Bnei Yisrael have a custom to make a joyous occasion with the Torah. V'skiriya Simchas Torah, it's called the joy of the Torah. However, mitzad this, there's actually an advantage even over the two aspects, the other aspects of Yom Tov, the fact that it's the second day of Shmini Atzeres and the fact that it's a Rabbanon Dikei Yom Tov, which makes it exciting, as we explained in certain places, that a minig Yisrael, a custom that Bnei Yisrael do, has an advantage which is not even there in a Deiraisa and not in a Divrei Sefer. The Rebbe quotes Likutei Torah, and basically the point being that the fact that it's not written, it's not because it's not important. It's so high that it can't be written. So the Divrei Sefer and the things of Divrei Sefer, the Chachamim, it's so high that it can't be written in Teresh B'Ksav, it's written in Teresh B'Alpeh, the oral Torah. Then there are Minhagim, which are so high, and they evoke such a great light that they can't even be written in Divrei Sefer, in the oral Torah, in the oral Torah, and they become something which Bnei Yisrael initiate on their own, so to speak, as we'll continue to explain it. So Dalit, these three things we find in Simchas Torah itself, there's three levels. From the name Simchas Torah, just says Torah generally, doesn't specify which Torah is. From this we understand that the Simcha is connected with Torah in general. Generally, when you talk about the giving of Torah, it's the first luchos, Shavuos, when Hashem gave the Torah. Nonetheless, the reason why Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeres are not on Shavuos is because the Simcha of Simchas Torah is connected specifically with its second luchos, which the second luchos are in the written Torah itself. They're like the Divrei Sefer, they're like the oral Torah. And then you have the third aspect of which is Simchas Torah, the fact that the Yidden are creating a Yom Tov called Simchas Torah. That's a minig, it's a custom. As the Zohar says, V'noyagim, it's a custom to make a joy with the Torah. The Bnei Yisrael has created this custom. Since a minig Yisrael, as we said earlier, a custom reaches even higher than Torah, and even higher than the oral Torah, than the words of the scribes, Divrei Seferim. That's why the Zohar says, in continuation to the fact that Bnei Yisrael have a custom to make a day that they call Simchas Torah, it says, they adorn the Sefer Torah with its crown. You know that the crown is very high level. And afterwards, and through this, that Yidden have the minig to make a joy with the Torah, so the Zohar tells us that they create a kesser, they create a level of crown to the Torah. Kesser Torah, crown Torah, refers to a level that's higher than Torah. Even the Torah, the way it is, in its upgraded state, so to speak, having been given in the second luchos, which came with an abundance of additions to the way the Torah was given in the first luchos. Nonetheless, through the fact that the Bnei Yisrael make a minig of Simchas Torah, they add to the Torah, they bring in the level, they reach the level of Keser, of the crown of Torah. And now we're going to explain. The explanation is this. The reason that the luchos shnias, that the second luchos are higher than the first luchos, and they're called kiflaim teshiyah, they're doubled for strength. It's the double. It's, in other words, the second giving, which adds more strength, is because they come. What's the specialty of the second luchos? Because they come through the avodah of tshuva that the Yidden do. Right? The Yidden messed up in the Egel, and then they came back to Hashem, and now Hashem says, I see, salachti, I see you guys have made up, now I'm going to give you the second luchos. So when something is achieved through Neshamas Yisrael, there's something in it higher than Torah. Why? Because we know that the source of Neshamas Yisrael, of the souls of the Yidden, is higher than the source of Torah. However, since the luchos shnias, like we know this from various talks, that there's two things that are higher than the world, Yisrael and Torah, but which one of them between the two is higher than which? Yisrael is higher than Torah. However, since also the second luchos were given from above, in other words, it was the avodah of tshuva, the Jewish people's service of tshuva was the reason for the giving of the second luchos. But however, the second luchos themselves were given, they weren't created by the Yidden down here. The Yidden, so to speak, elicited them, evoked them by doing tshuva, and then Hashem said, I'm going to give you the luchos, a second set of luchos. But still, what happened through the tshuva was that the second set of luchos were given from above. So that's why also the second set of luchos are an inyan of Torah, which, remember, we said Torah is one level, but Neshama Yisrael are higher than Torah. In Torah itself, they're the higher level of Torah. It's called Kiflaim Toshiyah. It's doubly empowered because they come through as a result of the Avodah of Tshuva Yidden. When we talk about the meaning that Am Yisrael created, that Lemevad Yisrael imachedva, according to Zohar, that Yisrael makes a joy with the Torah, since the whole concept of this day comes through Yidden, so that's why it achieves something even higher than Torah. It achieves the crown of Torah, Keser Torah, which is higher than Torah. Even higher than the Torah, the way it is, in a way of doubly impactful, which comes through the tshuva on the second luchos, that which the Yidden initiate in Torah, this day of rejoicing in Torah, which creates, well, as we say, the adornment of the Torah, this is even higher than Torah, the way it is, luchos shniyos that are evoked by tshuva. We're going to explain how that works and why that is. Vav. This is also a connection of Simchas Torah with the Shari Eira, Shari Bracha, Shari Sacha, the three gates: blessing, light, blessing, and success. Because these three things also are represented this way. We have in Simchas Torah, we have the Torah in general. Then we have the second luchos, the added advantages within Torah itself. It's the second luchos, and then we have the minig to make the Bnei Yisrael make a joy with the Torah. These are similarly and reminiscent to the three levels of Eira, Bracha, and Asacha. So let's analyze. Eira is light. The difference between light and Bracha simply is when you bench somebody. Bracha is to bless somebody. You bless somebody, so your intention is that the one who's being blessed should benefit. You have him in mind. You try and cater and tailor the blessing to the one who's being blessed. However, we talk about light. Light has got to do not about the one who's receiving the light. It's got to do with the nature of the source of light. The source of light is one of the ways light operates is that it comes out in an automatic way from the source of light. And more than that, it does not distinguish or differentiate or know where it's providing light to. As we say that the sun shines on the entire world. And therefore it can even go into a dirty place, into a place of garbage. Even though there's absolutely no purpose to have the sun shining in a place of ashba, in a place of dirt and garbage and grime. But it doesn't matter. Light doesn't take into account the places it's shining. It shines. That's the nature of a luminary. It gives forth light and it shines. Now this is, bracha is different. We say bracha is, when you give a blessing, you're trying to tailor that there should be a benefit for the one who's the recipient of the blessing. So this is the connection between the luchas Rishon, the first tablets, the first luchas, and the second luchas, with Shari Eid and Shari Bracha. How do they connect to light and bracha? By the giving of the first luchas, the main emphasis was that Hashem was giving them. Not so much the emphasis that first we have to check out whether the Yidden are going to become receptacles to understand and to become totally one with the Torah. And that's why, what actually happened is that the Yidden, in terms of the state of being that they were at the time of Matan Torah, in Chag HaShavuos, the fact that it didn't work is because they weren't really at the state of presence of being able to totally absorb it and grasp it, the Torah that they were given. And that's why. So it's like Eiro, it's like Hashem shined forth the first luchais, but it wasn't really able to be grasped and internalized by the Yidden, and so it didn't hold. That's like Eira, light, which the main thing is that light is a result of the source of light, not taking so much into account the recipients. However, the second luchais, they were evoked, they were generated by the recipients. It came, their giving came through the Avodah of Yidden. So, through what they did, through their tshuva, they elicited the giving of the luchas. In other words, that the emphasis here is that the Yidden should be able to be receptacles, to be able to receive and take in the Torah. And for this purpose, for this reason, the luchas shniyas, the second luchas, are connected with shari bracha. We talk about the gates of bracha, of blessing, because the emphasis is on the one that's being blessed, that the one that's being blessed should receive the bracha. However, since Seif Ma'aseh Machshavat Tchila, the end of what takes place is really what was originally in the plan. And the Kavanah Pnimi is the internal intention in the drawing down of Hashem's light is that it should be able to be grasped and received in an internalized way in the kelim and the receptacles and the vessels. That's why the second luchas are higher than the first luchas. Kiflaim Tushir. Why? Because the fact of the matter is, even though you could say the light beaming down from the first luchas was higher, but the fact is that Hashem wants it to be absorbed. And so the fact that the Bnei Yisrael now created this state where they elicited the giving of the luchas and they're prepared for it and becomes absorbed within them, this is more in sync with Hashem's plan. And if that's really Hashem's plan, that it should be absorbed in the world below through the Bnei Yisrael, so that means that it's where it's touching, where it's emanating from is from a higher place. What Hashem's plan really was. Hashem's plan was that there should be a connection and a seamless integration between Hashem's giving the Torah and the Bnei Yisrael receiving the Torah. That happened by the second luchas. However, let's learn a little deeper, says the Rebbe Zion, in what it says. We say, Seif Ma'aseh Machshavat Tchila. The end of the thought was the plan in the beginning. In a simple reading, what that means is that what a person initially has in his mind as his plan, that's what unfolds as he achieves his plan. And when he gets to the achievement of his plan, this is what I intended, l'chatchila. Says the Rebbe, there's a deeper pirish. And that is that Seif Ma'aseh means the end of what your person did is not what he did when the doing is concluded, but what happens after the end of the doing. In other and where does that reach? That reaches in Tchila, in before even the thought about the plan. As the Rabbi gives her a dogma, and this is very deep Chassidus. This is brought in the Hemshech of Ayin Beis. You may have heard of famous Chassidic discourse by the Rebbe Rashab that spans over 3 books and many years. Very deep Chassidus. And the Rebbe is here encapsulating it for us. There's an example given that a person, a craftsman who does a craft, who creates something, a malach, he finishes his job. He made some object. And this object, this malacha, the work that he did came out beautiful, came out in the best possible way, in a way of hatzlacha. This was a successful undertaking. So it's not pshat that lechatchila in his mind's eye, the craftsman saw what would be. Because a craftsman, you cannot predict whether the thing will be with success, whether the thing will be, as we say, gelungen, whether it will be, it's going to work out well. The only thing a craftsman can do is he's going to try and do his best. So he sees a result, an acceptable result, right? Then when it becomes in a way of atzlach and he sees an exceptional result, this is seif ma'isa, this is something that happens beyond the ma'isa, beyond the full completion of what he needed to make. This is a successful thing. This was successful. That touches a place deeper than the initial plan. That touches a place which is before tchila, seif ma'isa, what happens after the ma'isa. The hatzlacha that's perceived after the ma'isa touches machshava tchila, touches a place before the plan, something that hadn't come down in a revealed way. Like we said, you can't plan to have an outstanding success. You can plan to do your best and to have the finished product. The fact that it's an outstanding success now touches you deeper than what you even planned. Ches. So when we transfer this back, so to speak, to the way to Hashem. Similarly, also kavayochel, so to speak, when we talk about hatzlacha above. So since everything that happens below is coming down as nishtalsha from above, so that's why we can try and assign a certain level of understanding from the way we understand things below and correspond it to above. When we talk about the Dira Le'Yisbarach Hashem's dwelling place, that the Yidden do through their Aveda, so when the Yidden do it in a way that's a successful way, the absolute best way and a successful way, it's even better than, so to speak, what Hashem planned for the Yidden to do. Even though obviously we understand that Hashem's plan was that Bnei Yisrael should make the best possible kind of dwelling place for him. But that's a level that's before that's a level that's called Techila, before Machshava. It's before the concrete plan. It's the plan, the level of plan before the actual crystallized plan, so to speak. What's the explanation for this? At least says the Rebbe B'Ktzara, at least in brief. Apparently, again, this is explained at length in Ayin Beis. So that was giving an encapsulation. The Tachlis HaKavan is the whole essential purpose of creation is that the Yidden should create a dwelling place for Hashem in the lower worlds through their own Aveda B'Keach Atzmam, their own self-initiation. Creating a space for Hashem, not as a way that they feel they're being pushed by Hashem, but in a way that they feel they're doing it. And since the Ratz and the desire of Hashem for worlds, also Tchilas Machshav, when we talk about the first crystallization of the plan for worlds, has a shayches to the Bria, it's the plan for worlds. And therefore, if it's a plan for worlds, it has its effect on the world. It has to have its effect has to be felt. Therefore, this kavana, that Hashem wants a self-initiated dwelling place in the lower worlds, that the Yidden shouldn't feel that Hashem is pushing them, this can't be part of the crystallized plan. It has to be, so to speak, a secret. It has to remain in a higher level. It's not part of the actual plan. It's not in the Tchilas HaMachshava of the Bria. Because the moment as it's in Tchilas HaMachshava of the Bria, it's the first level of, it's in the beginning of the plan for creation. If Hashem's planning that the Bnei Yisrael should be creating this dira, that's already affecting the Bnei Yisrael. They're not doing it totally b'keach atzma on their own initiative. So it has to be something that doesn't come down into the crystallized plan, the Tchilas Machshava. It stays at a level in Helem, in a concealed level, and a level that's called Tchila. It's pre the actual plan for the worlds, and it's higher than Tchilas Machshava, than the beginning of the plan of the worlds. In other words, we're talking about so to speak, a concealed plan, which is part of a kavana that's not crystallized and becomes the beginning of creation. It stays aloof and therefore it doesn't affect those, the Bnei Yisrael, that have to create the Dira, have to create the dwelling place for Hashem, and therefore when they create the dwelling place for Hashem, it's totally through their Avodah, through their own self-initiated Avodah. So now we understand that the fact that Yidden do achieve and carry out the intention of Hashem, that Nisav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem desire to have a dwelling place in the lowering worlds, that's self-initiated by them. This is in a way of Atzlacha. In other words, it's not in a way of just fulfilling the plan of Hashem, it's in a way of successfully fulfilling the plan of Hashem. Like we said, the Uman, the craftsman, he takes upon himself to finish the work. The plan he had was to do the job. The Hatzlacha, that it becomes in a successful way, this was not even thought about by him in a conscious way. It touches someplace deeper. The fact that the Bnei Yisrael fulfilled the Dira B'Tachteinim, it's not something that Hashem consciously, so to speak, thought about it, because otherwise that would have affected the Yidden and it wouldn't be theirs. Right? It's something that they do, and it therefore touches even deeper. This is Hatzlacha. That's the level of Shari Hatzlacha. On Simchas Torah we have the concept, we have the Hatzlacha, that we're able to achieve something that was in Hashem's Tchila and Hashem's pre-plan. So now says in Tes, even though this Dira, this dwelling place for Hashem that the Yidden create with their own self-initiation, this is done by fulfilling the Torah mitzvahs with all their detail. However, where do we see this in a revealed way? You see this in a revealed way when the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs is not for any reason. It's only because Hashem commanded us, not because there's a beauty or there's some kind of a spiritual revelation or segula, some kind of some achievement that's done by the mitzvahs. No, as Chazal, as the Lashon, the well-known expression, even if Hashem, afilu nitztavinu lachtav eitzim, even if we would command it to chop wood, senselessly chop wood, but if we were commanded, Hashem tells us we do it. So also in the concept of minhagei Yisrael, and in that place, in that acceptance of Vitzivon, of doing what Hashem wants, there we see the Bnei Yisrael doing simply on their own what Hashem wants, and that creates a dwelling place for Hashem. More particularly, where is that expressed? In Minhagei Yisrael, in customs. Because with Minhagim, there's no visible instruction from above. So therefore, what's really being done when a Yid does a minhag is the concept of Minhagim by Yidden is self-initiated by the Yidden below. In other words, the fact that Hashem has Ratzon Elyon, the supernal will that Yidden should fulfill the Minhagei Yisrael, the customs of Yisrael, is in a concealed way. Even more, we just said now that the desire that Hashem wants that Bnei Yisrael should do Torah mitzvahs b'chlal is in a way Hashem hides it. So the Bnei Yisrael shouldn't do it in a way that it's thrust upon them from above, but you do it in a way that they self-initiate. But by minhagim, it's even more concealed. It doesn't say it anywhere. There's absolutely no commandment, not in the Torah B'Sav, not in the Torah B'Peh. And that's the explanation. But the Chefsha says that in brackets, that through the minig that the Bnei Yisrael do Simchas Torah, they make a joy with the Torah, that brings down, they adorn the Sefer Torah, ma'atron the Sefer Torah, they adorn the Sefer Torah, Bekesle, with its crown, which Keser Torah, the crown of Torah, is higher than Torah, even the way it is mitzad the second luchas. So why is that happening through minhagim? Because the second luchas, even though the main emphasis is the fact that the Bnei Yisrael were worthy and were prepared to be mekabel the Torah, right? As we said, bracha, taking into account the Yidden are kalim to receive it. Nonetheless, since the second luchas were after all given from above, like bracha, even though bracha takes into account the needs of the one who's being blessed, but it's the blesser who's blessing. So that's not that level we're talking about. Seif Maisa, the end of the Maisa, the Hatzlacha, that touches a place deeper even than the beginning of the Machshava. And therefore, Torah mitzvahs in general, when we do it, that indeed completes the Machshava, Seif Maisa, but it touches Machshava, in Tchilas Machshava. Yeah, but now, through doing Minhagim, the minig of Simchas Torah, for example, the mevad imachedva, to make a joy with the Torah. After this Torah was given Milamayla, so we say that's already the darga of Seif Maisa. That's like similar to the concept of Hatzlach we talked about, that after the craft was made, as we see that it's Hatzlacha, that it was exceptionally successful. That is already the level of Seif Maisa after the doing, and that touches, as we said before, the level of Tchila, which is higher than Tchila Samachshava. Says the Rabbi here in 44, the Rabbi sums it up. We could say that Sharei Eira therefore refers to Eir. Sharei Bracha refers to Kalim. So there's Eir, then it goes into Kalim, and then there's Hatzlacha, which is the Keser, which is higher than Eir and Kalim. Yud, according to this, we'll understand, it becomes even a bigger question. What's the bigger question? Since the achievement of Simchas Torah is the union of Hatzlacha, right? It's the union of Minig, of the Minig of Keser, Minig. And the inyan of Eiram Bracha, L'cheira, they're already there by Shavuos. The concept of Torah, the way it is, light and Bracha, that's already there on Shavuos. And that's already there by Yom Kippur, by the Luchas Shnias. So why does it Dafka Simchas Torah? Why isn't it already on Shavuos, beside the giving of the Torah in and of its own? Why is this something that becomes specially connected to Simchas Torah, like the Friedrich Rebbe seems to say? So we'll understand first that by understanding the following. We find that through the avodah, through properly learning your gaita, through a toiling of a yid in Torah, there's an addition in Torah. In other words, until we find in Hilchos Talmud Torah, we say that there's a chiyuv, we have an obligation to be mechadish in Torah, to add in Torah. The Zohar talks about la'afoshalot, to add, to expand the Torah. Similarly, by Minhagi Yisrael, by the customs of Bnei Yisrael, which Minig Yisrael, we are told that Minig Yisrael Torah, customs of Yidden are Torah. This is something that we add in Torah, so to speak. So, what what that means? That means that by doing a Minig, actually Torah expands. Torah is added to. L'cheira, Taka, how can Bnei Yisrael add to the Torah? So we explained, Taka, that the source of Neshamas Yisrael is higher than the source of Torah. So we can understand how, therefore, the Bnei Yisrael can create something new within Torah. But we don't understand how can what the Bnei Yisrael add, especially if they're creating a minig, which is, so to speak, coming from outside Torah, how can that become a chelek? How can that actually become a portion of Torah? It was like, we can understand that Bnei Yisrael can bring something to the table, but how does that actually merge and become Torah? That's it. That should be Torah. That should be what the Bnei Yisrael do, but that's not actually Torah. But here we say, no, the minig actually becomes Torah. In other words, square brackets here, not only are we obligated to do the instructions that the Bnei Yisrael, that the Chachamim were Mechadesh. Okay, we could say there's Torah, and then we have to listen to Chachamim, which are higher than Torah. No, we say that they actually become a part of Torah. And this Lashon, that Minig Yisrael Torah, that the custom of Yidden is Torah, says it about even minhagim that aren't connected with the Beis Din Haggadah, with the Sanhedrin. Even later minhagim. How can we say that becomes Torah? How does that join and become a part of the Torah? So the explanation is like this. In Torah there's two levels. One, the way Torah is the Chokhmah and Ratzon, the wisdom and will of Hashem, that from this bechina, from this level of Chokhmah and Ratzon, Torah is set out in a way that there are things that the Yidden have to be mechadish, things that the Yidden have to reveal in the Torah. And then there's a second level, the fact that that Hashem and His Torah one. The way Torah is sourced in the essence of Hashem, that when we talk about that level, this new thing of Torah can become a portion of Torah. How? Because Hashem's kavanah is that Yid should be mechadish. This is Hashem's kavanah. Hashem's kavanah is that Yid should be mechadish. They should create novel things in Torah through their own self-initiation. And through this, what is visible, what becomes revealed, is their source in the essence of Hashem. Therefore, after the fact that Yidden, through creating novel things in Torah, what they do is they draw down, the Hamshachas Ha'atzma is drawing down of the essence of Hashem. So what happens then thereafter is that this becomes also achieved. This is Hamshacha is drawn down into Torah. Like it says in Sefer HaBoyer, that David was connected Torah with Hashem through his learning Torah, because he was sourced. Shamas Yisrael sourced higher than Torah, drew down from Hashem into Torah. That's why the Chidush, both the Chidushim that the Yidden learn in the Torah, through their toil in Torah, and also the Minhagim and the Gzeiris, the decrees, that Yidden are Mechadish, new things, new customs, they become a Chelek for Torah. Because that's Hashem's intention from the very beginning. And now we'll understand why in this Sikha we explain that not just Shariat Tzlacha, which you understand, Shariat Tzlacha we said is the concept of Minhag, the concept of the success that can't be anticipated in the beginning. Okay, that's Minhag. That we understand is Shachas Simchas Torah. But even these other things of Shari Eira, the gates of Eira and gates of Bracha, which L'chaira you would think they're between Shavuos and Yom Kippur, they're giving in the first look and the second look. You have those already. Why do we need Simchas Torah? No, but they too are connected to Simchas Torah. Because even Eira, even the Eira and Bracha are there in Torah mitzad itself, but the true union of Eira is, of light is, that everything that's there in the luminary, in the Moir, it comes out to light. Also that in and of itself is higher than being in a geder of Gilui, higher than being able to be revealed. And that also when we talk about Bracha. So the only place where this can truly come in a revealed state is when you reach that level of Keser, which that's Simchas Torah. Since the true union of Torah is the fact that that Hashem and the Torah are totally one. So it comes out that Dafkan Simchas Torah, when Yidden reach that level, that they, through keeping a minhag, they adorn the Sefer Torah with its crown, and they draw down, and they reveal the source of Torah, the way Torah is sourced in the essence of Hashem. Dafka, then we have the revelation, together with the Shariat Tzlacha, you have the true revelation also of the Shari Eira, the gates of light, and Shari Bracha, B'tach Hashem is in their complete way. I honestly have to say that the Sikha is a bit beyond me, but good Yom Tov. This is a shir on the Kotesichas Chelek Yutes, the Sicha of Voes Chanan.